I think over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see a lot of what we're seeing now, and that is flexibility. So I'm actually working on a new book, which will come out late next year around employee experience. And I'm talking to a lot of executives and a lot of leaders about that. And the key theme that keeps coming up is flexibility. And not just flexibility in terms of where you work or how you work, but flexibility in terms of how you can shape your career. So for example, if you're in marketing, flexibility to be able to shape your career path and go in a different direction. Flexibility in terms of the benefits that you have. Flexibility in terms of when you work. So I think the future of work is still very much going to be flexible. And it's interesting because even if you look before the pandemic, the conversations around flexibility were still happening all the time. Right? It's not like this concept of flexibility is new. I think really just what the pandemic helped us show is that at scale, being productive and working from home is possible. But we're also seeing a little bit of a rebalancing because what happened during the pandemic is everybody worked from home. And now a lot of organizations are getting back to kind of that hybrid work. I see that being the same thing in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years. It's hard to imagine a scenario in which nobody shows up to the office. On the flip side of that, it's also hard to imagine a scenario where everybody only shows up to the office 9 to 5. So especially as we see more advancements in technology, things like generative AI, augmented and virtual reality, I think that flexible approach is going to be the best thing that we can do. Speaking one more thing on the pandemic, I think the big challenge that a lot of companies had and why we're seeing so much debate and conversation and kind of this battle happening between employees and organizations is because there were a lot of organizations during the pandemic that were scared to stay true to themselves. And what I mean by that is they said, hey, we understand there's a pandemic. We're going to be a remote first company. Go do whatever you want. And then, we'll figure things out later. Do you want to hear something really crazy? 96% of the people who watch videos on this channel are not subscribed. Help me change that number around by subscribing so that you can get access to more videos just like this one. And now let's get back to the content. That approach did not work well because when the pandemic was over, a lot of these organizations now realized that they did want employees in the office at least some of the time. And then they had to go back to those employees and say, actually, we changed our mind. We want you in the office sometime. And employees revolted. And they said, wait a minute, you said we can be remote first, and now you're saying we can't? Like, what are you talking about? The companies that did it well are the organizations like a UPS, like a Northrop Grumman. These were the companies that even during the pandemic, they were very clear and they said, we want you to understand that we are an in-person corporate culture first. Now, during the pandemic, we will of course allow you to work from wherever you want, but post-pandemic, make no mistake, we are an in-person company culture first, and we will ask you to come back to the office. And you know what happened to those organizations when they made those announcements? Very little. There was very little resistance. A lot of employees understood. They were under no impression that these organizations were going to go 100% remote. So regardless of what happens in the future, organizations need to do a much better job and leaders need to be much stronger to talk about what matters to the company. What kind of a corporate culture are you looking to build? And be strong with that message. Stay strong with your convictions, with the values, what's going to benefit the business. And if you're clear on that, and if you can communicate that over time, there should be no misjudgments by your employees. But if you keep flip-flopping and saying, yeah, maybe we're remote first, maybe we'll try this, maybe we'll try that, yeah, of course your employees are going to get upset. So I think the biggest thing for leaders going forward is to make sure you understand what matters to your company, what's going to make the biggest impact, the type of corporate culture that you have, and what your values are. Communicate that with your employees, and then any message, any strategic decision that you make, tie that back to what those things are, and your employees will be on board.